This program is brought to you in part by a grant from the Lion Foundation.
This rhythmic foundation, based on the communal ethos, passed from one generation to the next, through music, through dance, through drama, through art, through music. This eternal rhythmic sound, oral interpretation of sound, through music, through dance, through drama, through art, through music, of the Negro, black people's forced bondage, here within the confines of the United States of America, also known as the United States of North America, from inner African rhythms, field hollers and work songs as slaves, along with gospels and spirituals and hymns and folk songs and folk tales and ballads, redefining our human spirit within this relationship, this inhuman capitalistic relationship of this system that we temporarily exist in, this rhythmic sound, this oral interpretation of improvisational rhythm, this human spiritual sound to overthrow this oppression that we exist in, the deaths that came, that continue to come, the funeral marching bands that come along, that played the blues and the Creole songs, the ragtime and minstrel, the New Orleans and the Dixieland sound, and the bebop of the hard blues and the funky blues and the boogie woogie sound with the great big band swing sound, that rhythm and blues with touches of gospel and rock and electric guitars, that free form, that improvisational sound of great big black music or urban folk music, that relentless pursuance of improvisational truths, that rhythmic sound, they call it music, they call it jazz, and we call it urban folk music, like prayers on tenor or Dexter or Coltrane, John Coltrane or maybe Ornette Coleman or Cleanhead, Sonny Rollins, and of course Yardbird, Charlie Yardbird Parker or Archie Shepp, Miles Davis on trumpet, or perhaps Dizzy Gillespie or Clifford Brown, or Lee Morgan or Donald Byrd or Louis Armstrong, maybe Marcus Belgrave, or Sidney Beckett or Buck Johnson from New Orleans Storyville fame. Then on piano we have Monk, the legend of Monk, Thelonious Monk or Horace Silver, or Bud Powell, Hal McKinney, Venus Newborn Jr., and the list can go on and on and on. And on bass we got Charlie Mingus or Paul Chambers or Ray Brown or Oscar Pettiford, Ali Muhammad Jr. taking care of business, or Ray McKinney plucking down. And on snares we got Max Roach, perhaps Philly Joe. What about Tiny Tabal or Art Blakely or Cozy Cole? Or our own Elvin Jones. Perhaps in singing out and out improvisational sound, you got Lady Day, Billie Holiday, Sarah Vaughan, Dinah Washington, or Ella Fitzgerald, or even Betty Carter just yodeling away from Bessie Smith legend. The list goes on. Griot Galaxy, that new science fiction band, urban folk music, improvisational rhythmic sounds.
It is the most hybrid form of music that the world knows.
Was indigenous classical, native to this country.
Well, these are just tones within tones, within tones, within tones, within tones.
We're talking about a music. We're talking about a term that was given a certain kind of music.
Improvisation is the music in our art, in this society now, because when you improvise music, you're playing from your heart. You're not sitting there reading what's on the paper, playing this note at the beginning of the bar every time you come around to it. other words, monotony.
Created black music, what they call jazz, or black classical music.
Does that with his feet, and it's sand. And with the rhythm music playing, it's jazz.
I'll make fun for you, you'll only do things I tell you, baby. Make fun for you, you go anywhere. With me, I don't care, but baby, I declare, I'll make fun for you. The girls have no fear. With me, they'll go anywhere. Yes.
To come to Detroit, playing with Cecil Scott's band, we were a local band of schoolboys just playing school dances and parties around Springfield, Ohio. And incidentally, McKinney's was a bigger name. McKinney's Simcoes was a bigger name than, because they had played Columbus, Zanesville, Cincinnati, and all around the area. And they came in town to play an engagement at Memorial Hall, which was a famous dance place there. And their banjo player had quit the day before. And so they inquired around the town if they knew any banjo players in town that they could use. And they said, well, there's one that lives up on Fair Street, Dave Wilborn. Says he's been playing with Cecil and Lloyd Scott. So they came up to my house and asked me would I sit in with them that night. And I sat in with them, and of course they were very pleased or satisfied with the way I filled in for that first night. Of course, we didn't have to, it was mostly head tunes, didn't have to read any music. And so after they left Springfield, McKinney contacted me about 2 weeks later and asked would I go to Montreaux Beach with him, which was a summer resort they were playing every summer. And against the wishes of my mother and father, they finally acquiesced and let me join the band to go to Montreaux Beach, Michigan, which was near Jackson. And after the engagement in Jackson, they had an engagement at the Green Mill Gardens in Toledo, Ohio, which was a famous nightclub and night spot in Toledo. And incidentally, while we were there, Gene Goldkett was looking for a band to spell the Gene Goldkett Band, which was in the Greystone Ballroom. He had 14 men in his band, and they wanted a black band to offset the Gene Goldkett Band or to complement that band. So they came over and heard us, and they liked what they heard with McKinney Simcoes, and so he asked us to come over for a week's tryout. Well, we tried out for a week, and later we stayed there 6 years, but under the banner of McKinney's Cotton Pickers. The McKinney Simcoes name didn't last long because Gene Goldkett thought it wasn't a commercial enough name, and the manager suggested a name that would from the South, which the boys resented because we weren't from the South and hadn't picked any cotton, and they resented the name of McKinney's Cotton Pickers. And he said, well, just use the name while you're here, and then when you go back to Springfield or wherever you're going, he says, go back to your name. But once they put McKinney's Cotton Pickers up on the marquee, it stuck. And I don't think any name has meant as much to the band as McKinney's Cotton Pickers.
I used to come here many, many years ago, and it's always been one of my favorite towns. Just been beautiful, everybody. You know, and right from the beginning, it seems as though that everybody seemed to get sort of close to us, and we were close to them. And from that first time we played here, it was a ball. And that's the way it's always been. And right up till now, I feel as though it's the same way, and I feel that each time that we go out on the stage, I feel, you know, it's like that.
After the band broke up, when Paradise Valley blossomed, I organized my own band, and I was doing master ceremonies work too. I was the MC and a band leader in the 3 Sixes, the Plantation, the Chocolate Bar, Sport Trees.
I've been in Detroit now. I've been back here. This is my home, but I've been back here now 14 years. And I went to New York in 1938. I made my home between New York and California. But I traveled all the time, so I didn't even stay there half the time. Only for a while, you know. During the time at 52nd Street, I was there a lot, in Birdland.
Bring the tempo down a bit. Give you one of those good old goodies from the Boss Man, the only real truly bad leader we have left. Duke is gone. Basie's still here. Right? My man. Here's one of the Basie's great ones we kind of like, Shining Star.
Tap dance, I think, is the closest thing to jazz, more than any other dance. Because you can improvise with your feet, just the same as the guy was doing with his horn. You know what I'm talking about? Like Baby Lawrence is one of the world's greatest dancers. He's dead now, but this man was fantastic. He used to dance to tunes like Charlie Parker play. In fact, he worked with all the Dizzy, Byrd. We all worked around together with David Lawrence. He'd come in, nobody was ashamed. He said, man, can I dance one? Like everybody's jamming. Everybody wants to blow one. So man, let me blow one. He welcomes. Can I dance one? Now, when he said, can he dance one, he means that. I mean, he's going to really do just like if he's playing a horn with his feet. And he do that. Bill Robinson? Oh, yeah, since I was a kid. I used to watch him. And funny thing, you know, people don't know, Bill Robinson, he didn't dance with tap shoes. His shoes were wooden bottoms. Did you know that? Wooden bottoms, yeah. And he taught Shirley Temple most of her things and all the dancing like that. But, tonight even, I got a couple of guys that is best in the business too. Now, the one, Chuck Green used to be with a dance team called Chuck and Chuckles. That was a great dance team years ago. Sandman has always had that name of Sandman because he puts sand in a box, you'll see, sprinkle out there, and he does it. And what he does with his feet, it sounds like a drummer would be playing with brushes. You get that. Does that with his feet, and it's sand. And with the rhythm music playing, it's jazz.
More? Chuck Green. A-Train.
There's been many great artists that has left this band. We've had a couple of them, and then there's one playing here right now, the Billy Mitchell, and of course the great Thad Jones was in our orchestra, and a very important guy, a very important one. And the Wilkins brothers, Jimmy, he has a mama. You heard his band here, haven't you?
Well, in the 40s, naturally, World War II brought in a boom for music. Entertainment was always good, even though during the Depression it was inexpensive, and performers or entertainers didn't make much money, but at least they were able to survive. And with the onslaught of the war, there was a lot of demand for entertainment, especially live entertainment. And music was just booming during that era, even though a lot of the performers and musicians had to enter the armed services. And of course, naturally, when you think of the 40s, you think of the big bands such as the Count Basies, the Glenn Millers, the Dorsey Brothers, and the Jimmy Lunsons, the Duke Ellingtons. But on the jazz scene, also brought a birth of a new type of jazz, which was labeled as bebop.
I was a young kid, I was a teenager, and the music of bebop was hitting us very hard here. We had some musicians around town who was interested in music, like Barry Harris and Kenny Burrell and Tommy Flanagan. And they were around town who already were involved in bebop. this time. But Charlie Parker was coming to town to work in a nightclub called the El Cino. And at that time he had Miles Davis with him and Tommy Potter and Duke Jordan and Max Roach and that was it. Miles, Tommy Potter, right, that was it. And he came into the El Cino and we all skipped school or whatever to catch a rehearsal, which he showed up that late. And then I had kind of sort of forged my birth certificate so that I could get into the club to see him because I was underage. I was 21. You had to be in the club. And so I snuck in and watched him work. This is my first time ever meeting him. And informed him that I was a singer. So one night he asked me to sing. And I sang.
Sing the old times, having you to sing to, just the old times, having you to talk with, and it's still a thrill to see my friends around me. Still a thrill as it was the day you met me. Old times, being back in my town, just like old times, hanging out for hours, making dreams come true, and doing things we used to do, just like old times being here with you. Old times, having you to sing to, just like old times, having you to talk with, and it's still a thrill to see my friends around me. Still a thrill as it was the day you met me. Old times, being back in my town. Old times, hanging out for hours, making dreams come true, doing things we used to do, just like old times being here with you. The bed, 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 that's Louis Nash on drums. Let it boom, let it boom, let it do the bot. Making dreams come true, doing things we used to do, just like old times being here with you, just like old times being here with you, just like old times being here with you, just like old times being here with you.
Well, big bands, I'll start with black bands to begin with. Just about all the greats have left us. Right now on the road there are only two named big bands. That's the Count Basie band and the Ellington band under the leadership of Mercer Ellington, which has lost a lot of its Duke Ellington flavor. Currently, they're employed at the theater doing sophisticated late in New York. And the other bands, they are the, what I should say, the white bands. They're still Maynard Ferguson, Woody Herman, and several of the Glenn Miller type bands that the system is promoting to keep the Glenn Miller sound alive. So a lot of people today, when they hear you say something about the big band sound, all they can think of is the Glenn Miller sound. And with other few jazz bands, well, like the Maynard Ferguson band there, it's kind of a mixture of jazz rock. And whereas Woody Herman's still swinging in the traditional style, but it still has a lot of the pop things. And I forgot about Buddy Rich too. But in the blacks, after Basie leaves, who is left to carry on? And Basie naturally as time is limited. And so when Basie leaves, we have nobody to keep our art form going. They're not creating any new black bands to to carry the tradition. Those, the lesser named bands such as mine, nobody's doing anything to promote it. Even here in this city, you hear jazz concerts here. There's certain hotels. You see names, all the suburban band leaders, but you don't see my name anywhere.
Well, I tell you, this is really not the big band area. I mean, but it seems as though that it's kind of slipping back in now. That's people are starting to support the big bands and amazing, which is very amazing that the kids are beginning to dig big bands and especially jazz now, which is a great thing for guys like me, because we depend on these sort of things, and the kids are playing awful lot of them, especially in the high schools, a lot of good jazz and big bands.
I used to go stand in front of the Bluebird and see the bandstand was in the window. And so the pianist, a fellow named Phil Hill, who was, pretty good pianist for us to hear, he would see me and then he'd jump up from the piano and I'd run in and play a tune and I'd run back out and wait for the next set. And then I'd run in and play a tune and run back out. I celebrated my 21st birthday in the Bluebird. I made sure that they knew I was 21, even though I had run in there for years, quite a lot, So then the Bluebird was like a magical kind of place. I call it magical because it was about the only place in the world where it closed at 2 o'clock and 1:30 if Sarah Vaughan or somebody would walk in, an empty place would suddenly be full. So it was like really magic. It's just like, you wouldn't see people running to the telephone. It was like some kind of, what should I say, some kind of message relayer that was quite different. It was on a different kind of level than what we are used to, like telephones and things like that. Another thing in the head. The joint would be packed before, that's from 1:30 to 2, that's just like a half an hour. An empty joint would suddenly be packed full of people because Sarah Vaughan came in there. And that kind of thing. So it was a magic place. I played there with quite a few people. I played there when Miles Davis was living in Detroit. Detroit is where Miles Davis came and straightened himself up. And we worked together there. And I played there with Yusuf Lateef. And I played there with Billy Mitchell. And I played there with quite a few people. I really left Detroit. The first time I left with Max Roach. That was after Clifford Brown and Richie Powell, who were very good friends of mine. They got killed in an auto accident on the Pennsylvania Turnpike. And so I joined Max Roach with Donald Byrd.
And we were analyzing, why is it that this town of all cities would have, because it's out the way. And why is it that it became the music center? And I was talking to some people today. Actually, I would say that when somebody one of these days sit down and write the history, they will find out that this town has produced more talent and musicians than any other city in America on a one-to-one basis. Now, you got more people that come out of Detroit that are in the music entertainment field than any place in the world.
We got a little cooker left we're going to share with you. Please stay right here. They'll be right here just as soon as we're finished and the stage is reset. We're going to bring a couple of our hired old solos up front at this time.
we are extremely gratified to be invited to collaborate on the Montreux Detroit Jazz Festival last year, and its positive results were most encouraging. On behalf of the city of Montreux, I hope the second Detroit Montreux Festival will enjoy the same success it deserves. In terms of the economic benefits of the festival, I think, again, that's a long-range question. You know, one of the reasons why we at Detroit Renaissance are interested in sponsoring a festival is because we're trying to improve the quality of life for people in the area. And quality of life, again, is one of the measures that companies look at when they try and decide, should they put a plant in the city, should they have office workers work in the city. So there's that interrelationship between the quality of life and the economic viability of a community.
Subsequent to the 1980 festival, we had any number of jazz organizations and jazz emporiums that faltered. We had the music station that was run by Musicians United to Save Indigenous Culture, which I hope is only temporarily, but it's been a long temporary status, have closed their doors. The Jazz Center, the Detroit Jazz Center, the one-of-a-kind item in the world, in the nation, has also fallen upon hard times. Baker's Keyboard Lounge, which is highly touted as being the oldest jazz club in the country, has also suffered some very hard times. And the audiences have been inconsistent, to say the least, at places like Dummy George and other emporiums, particularly in the black community, that have been dealing with this music for eons. So until such time as those kinds of organizations, those established emporiums, and the musicians who normally play there began to profit from the Montreux Detroit Jazz Festival, they'll say no, they haven't been a catalytic action.
Well, the Music Society really was one of the greatest things we formed here in Detroit. We had a Music Society. We gave concerts every week. Kenny Burrell was the first president of our Music Society. The next president was a fellow named Chuck Gunter, and we had a membership maybe between 5,000 and 10,000 people. We gave concerts every week. We gave a play. Frank Foster wrote all the music for our play. We gave a play at the Music Hall. We presented quite a few things. We had guest artists come up, Max Roach, and everybody would come up and play. That's where Roy Brooks got his start, really, because he played every week. Roy Brooks was going to Northwestern. Charles McPherson, Lonnie Hilliard, these are other young Detroit musicians at that time. And they were given a chance to play every week with musicians. We had everybody there.
Music is an acronym. It's Musicians United to Save Indigenous Culture, which I'm the chairman. And we've been in existence since 1976, bicentennial year. Now, Detroit is older than the United States. But that's what it is, music.
The minute we can start employing ourselves and employing others of our like interests and who have our interests at heart other than the monetary profit, then you can see things being perpetuated and something left for others to follow, as an example. Myself, I haven't recorded a commercial album in 7 years for various reasons, but I have tried to produce my own albums, and you have to lease them or distribute them through the major companies. But I'm more sure of what the product and the ingredients are now. Mr. Brooks is when he finishes a concert, and I understand the Aboriginal choir performed the previous year. This is just another one of the many fingers on his hand of talent, you know, but music and the organization Friends of Music it speaks for itself. It's a matter of survival out here.
Between 67 and 70, I had been working with Aretha Franklin because she was here at that time, and Hal McKinney, of course. Well, I liked the type of thing I was doing with Harold, but naturally it was never enough. We were doing a lot of electric concerts in the schools. It was very pleasing type of work to do, but like I say, it wasn't enough to sustain. So I would go out. Aretha was working out here at the time, and it was conducive because she would just go out on the weekends. She'd work Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, or Thursday, Friday, and Saturday, something like that, and be right back in town. So that wasn't too bad. It's not like being on the road for 9 months.
Yeah, there's a big difference.
A big difference. You know, so I kind of enjoyed that type of a style. You know, especially after been traveling with Ray Charles for 6 consecutive years. I was kind of worn out, you know. So I became sick in '69 from a little bit too much dissipation, and I was up in Canada at the time. And so when I came back, I found out I had made some strides in Detroit. Evidently, I was doing some teaching before that. I didn't realize I was. And so when I got out the hospital, I found out there were quite a few people that were concerned about, you know, about me because they did a little benefit from me while I was in the hospital. And it kind of got me, you know, kept my spirits up. And then Hal McKinney offered the opportunity to work with Metropolitan Arts, which was an arts organization, total arts organization, communication, art, fine arts, drama, dance, and music. And so that was a splendid opportunity for me to expand myself.
I guess maybe I've always been interested in more than just playing the music. And then I suspected there were a lot of very fascinating stories behind the music, and also to understand the nature of the music gave me an understanding of its evolutionary position in history. You know, I have discovered that jazz is basically an evolutionary form of music that has gone beyond even what the basic tonal and rhythmic materials of the classic tradition have presented, you know. So I was interested in trying to know all facets of what I was doing, because I found, especially at the time I was developing, I had to, the music was much maligned, you know what I mean, and so therefore...
It still is, isn't
it? It is, to some degree.
Music and the musicians who play.
That's right, much maligned, and a lot of people say it's a bunch of noise, or they used to say that anyway, and they used to think of it as being, well, it'll never be as great as Beethoven, Bach, or Brahms, or whatever have you, and although I respected their musicianship, I felt that after 200 years the music had changed and evolved, and I had to prove it.
We originally started out as a band that was primarily a quartet that was playing the indigenous bebop and things like that music, and we decided, myself along with some colleagues, that somewhere along the line we had to do more than that. So we got into thinking more along the lines of preserving the history, as well as developing a mechanism through which young people could begin to develop their talents, because the only way it's going to continue to go. So that's basically how we started the organization almost 10 years ago.
I went from my rhythm and blues kind of jazz roots, popular jazz roots, and into things like John Coltrane and Miles Davis. And those really changed my thinking, or I shouldn't say changed, just really opened up my thinking about music. And from there, listening to their music and studying their music made it possible for me to later listen to people like Cecil Taylor and Ornette Coleman, Eric Dolphy, Art Ensemble Chicago, who Roscoe Mitchell later became a big influence in my musical life and development through an organization that we founded in Lansing. And about 1973, or I think we first began in 1973, and that organization has come to be known in Michigan, throughout Michigan, and well, throughout the country somewhat, as the Creative Arts Collective.
Griot Galaxy, what we try to do is establish a substrata of traditional relationships within the musical form, you see. And then we use what is left, which is the whole point of it, the improvisation, you know, to generate new forms and new ideas, you know. So that it's like we're trying, well, we were doing the same thing that the Dixieland people did, that the bebop people did, that the only way to really approach the music itself, I think the difference in the way we do it is more like intensity than anything else, and a certain consciousness of manipulating certain elements.
I do teach scales, and all types of scales, not only the diatonic scale, but the Eastern scales. And we just play from that. Sometimes we don't even rehearse the music that we play. We improvise it right on stage. It's composed right on stage. And I think this is where a lot of music came from. Even ragtime was improvised music. A lot of people don't realize that. And so it's just getting it more to the creative aspect of it, because there's some great black musicians playing this creative music, like Muhar Abrams, Joseph Jarman, Leroy Jenkins. And I just want to follow in that tradition. It's a long line, starting from Buddy Bolden, Miles Davis, Lester Young, Louis Armstrong, John Coltrane, and now Byrd Train Sco now.
Well, we've had a jazz program at Northwestern since 1971. That's when I came to Northwestern. We have a complete music program there. We teach all facets of music. I teach the jazz band and the concert band and the marching band now. And our jazz band entered a festival at Henry Ford Community College, and we played at the festival, and we made such an impression on the director of the festival, Don Love, that he said he would like to do something for us sometime. Well, I didn't even think about it at that time that it was anything other than coming back to the festival. And I've come to find out 2 years later that he was the United States representative for the Montreaux Jazz Festival in Montreaux, Switzerland. And he extended us an invitation. The first time we got the invitation, it was a little late and we couldn't raise the money. The second time we got the invitation, back to back, and it was kind of unheard of too, to receive 2 invitations in a row to go to Montreux, Switzerland. We got busy, we got community involvement, we raised the money, and we went.
First, the Negro youth, the students, university, they have to come together and say, what is it to be black? How do we define that? First, they would have to go to their music. After all, Nat Turner is the reputed author of the song called Steal Away, one of the great Negro spirituals. So it shows us that there's an intrinsic alliance between our politic, because he also forged one of the great rebellions in our history. There is an intrinsic relationship between our politics and our culture, specifically our music. Sojourner Truth, Harriet Tubman was very close to music and used music to help people escape from slavery. This is part of the whole African song of allusion, if we get into some musical history, and how Negroes carry over these various forms and spin them off, I believe, into certain types of meaningful political detail, shall I say. That's so. First, the Negro youth must begin to forge a dialogue and discuss what is their culture, what does it mean to be black, what are the essential components of our culture. I think music, how that figures in. What is the blues? What is jazz? Should we call these experiences by these old terms that have been handed down to us from slavery? After all, the Africans changed the names of their countries. Can't we change the names of our cultural experiences? We're still relating to our music through slave symbols, disco, soul, rock and roll. All this is done to keep Negroes from realizing that their music represents a whole diasporic entity. If they could understand that what they're doing down in those places in Haiti and Brazil, Candomblé, Lukumi, Voodoo, is very close to Afro-Christianity, which is the source of so-called jazz music. So first of all, what should we do as an intellectual academic constituency? We have to confab and dig what it is that we are. Maybe when we're listening to Stevie Wonder, we're also listening to a Shango rhythm.
This program is brought to you in part by a grant from the Lion Foundation.